Welcome, everyone. This is another week of the Tesla Beat podcast. We are at number 42. Been going strong. So thank you to both Jeff and Joe for your regular attendance. One of our other regulars, Alexandra, is out this week. So we have a special guest and a regular. He is a regular on our show, but we're always thankful for any time that he can spare us. Let's bring in Hans. Hans, how's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me. I always love these conversations.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think really that's what our show is and our podcast is really about. We're not gonna. I know you and Jeff are very busy throughout the week, just deep diving into anything and everything Tesla. But what I love about this podcast is, and it runs more along even with my beat, is really just what are the high level stories? How can we discuss those and really bring light to the hottest topics of the week? But we also don't go so deep to the point where we're covering it pretty much every day. But that's just the I think the way that we're running this podcast, and it's been turning out well so far. So thank you to all three of you for being here. But yeah, let's jump into it. So we did see a bump. You can see on February 13th down here that it did kind of bottom out at around 180. But we did see a bump. It actually even surged past 200 this past week. So year to date, we're down about 20%, but it was nice to see it kind of come back up. I know I don't know how many segments you guys are even running on the stock. And I think even Hans, we were talking a little bit about it. I think there's kind of a feeling a little bit, people are just, bummed out about the stock being down. But for us, or I'll speak for myself, I'm personally, again, long-term investor. So I know there's hiccups right now, but when I think of how this company is even being compared to some of these other companies that are just doing extremely well, I know it's just a matter of time before that happens. So again, long-term investor, but yeah, I think people are feeling continue to still feel down a little bit about the stock. I don't know if you guys wanted to say anything about that. Again, I know what most of your answers will be, but I don't know if you wanted to chime in on that. Joe, you're muted.
You said stock? I've never heard of it.
That's a fair answer.
I think you should do an imitation of each of our answers, like what you think that they'd be.
Yeah, that's true. I think I don't know if I want to take a stab at that, but I would say that the rhythm of it would be more of just the fundamentals of the company are very strong. Obviously they have a lot in their future product roadmap, and probably sexier than any other public company right now, based on where this company is going. I mean, I'm getting my Cybertruck, the most futuristic and viral truck tomorrow, assuming all things go well. But the semi, the robot potentially going into production next year, even the robo-taxi or the $25,000 vehicle going into production next year. Dojo, again, the energy and solar businesses, the sleeper here. So there's just a lot to unpack on that. But yeah, I won't, unless you want to add anything to that. So this was interesting. Here we are. I can't believe it. What is it? A year later, and one of the most important people at Tesla, again, a year and a half ago, whenever he left, when it comes to autopilot and really AI and full self-driving, he left Tesla to, he took a break and then went to OpenAI. And then surprisingly, even after the whole fallout with Sam Altman, he's back, or sorry, he leaves. So that was a shocker. I actually was pretty shocked about that. But what's your guys' take? What do you think this means potentially for an Elon Musk company, if anything? Do you think there's conversations or even text between Elon and this guy happening right now? I mean, what are you thinking? And what was your reaction when you saw this news break this week?
Dude, if there's not conversations happening between Elon and Andre right now, I'm pretty sure they've always stayed in communication. I don't even think they left on bad terms, honestly. So I could foresee something like that happening. I don't know if he would come back in the same capacity. I don't think it'd be interesting to see what happens. I think he would go more towards the Grok, if anything. But yeah, I can definitely see him coming back and Elon's warm embrace.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that I'm sure the communication lines are open and have been open. It's a question more about for Andre, like more of what he wants to do is kind of a next phase. I think he left Tesla AI in a position to get to V12 and get the full end to end. And so it's almost like, what would he come back to do? Would it be something closer to Grok or the bot, or what does he ultimately want to do for himself? It sounds like he wants to do, smaller projects himself right now. So yes, the lines of communication are open. You never know what could happen. Who knew that he would, be at OpenAI for, a very short period of time, right? So we never know what could happen, but I'm sure the lines of communication are open for Andre and many other people in this business with Elon.
Yep. I think it is really interesting that he left OpenAI. I think it doesn't spell good things. Obviously he was one of the last ones to sign. In fact, I don't know if he ever did sign the petition saying that he wanted Sam Altman back. I think all of that drama was a little bit, juvenile to him, and he was somewhat perplexed both with Ilya's actions, but then everything else. And I think it kind of left a bad taste in his mouth. And even though he's going to be very diplomatic and say, oh, it's nothing really going on here, I just think the overall feel to him was like, okay, these people are not, while they're doing some exciting work, there's a lot of other exciting work that's going on. And just the overall professionalism and state of OpenAI is not necessarily the best. And, whatever it was that caused Ilya to have trust issues with Sam, I think could potentially have bled over to Andre, because I think that Andre's relationship was stronger with Ilya. And so, now that Ilya's gone, that it's not surprising, honestly, that, Andre left because of that. And then back to what, Jeff was saying, as far as he seems to have, in the time between when he left Tesla and when he started at OpenAI, he had a lot of his own little just explorative projects where he would program stuff, create videos that were very educational, really just try and tinker with kind of the bleeding edge of technology, but do it in a way that was really beneficial to the open source community, and very, very much in service of teaching people how to really push the envelope. And so it sounds like he's already got some new videos like that in the works again. So it sounds like that's kind of what he's returning to. And I would definitely expect for us to see at least a season of that before then potentially he does get pulled into something larger. I think that as far as the Elon stuff is concerned, yeah, I would agree that Grok makes the most sense, that XAI is kind of where his interests lie. And he isn't going to want to go just manage a big team. He's going to want to do hands-on tech work in AI, whether that's LLMs or whatever. But the other side, the thing that Tesla has to offer now that they did not have to offer in a meaningful way when he left, was this cutting edge area of research in embodied AI with the robot specifically, not necessarily the car. And so that could be an extremely interesting project for him to work on if he can put boundaries around it to where he's actually doing a lot more hands-on work and is not necessarily in a managerial role. So I think there's some potential there, but most likely he should just or most likely, I think what will happen is that he'll tinker for 6 months to a year and then probably get pulled into some sort of startup. And who knows where that would end up.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked. I mean, here OpenAI just released this amazing, what's it called, Solara or something, Sora. But they just announced. So for those that haven't been on X, or haven't really been watching much of the, let's say, tech news, OpenAI just released a pretty much a chat bot which will allows you to give a text prompt, and you can type in a text and it will create a pretty much a cinematic video If you wanted two dogs on a mountain, doing a podcast, it can do it. So, there's so much that this company is doing. I mean, they are probably on one of the most advanced AI companies right now, with a huge backing from Microsoft. I mean, to the point where Microsoft can even really even bring a person back that got fired. It's interesting that I would think that this would be probably one of the most exciting times to be at OpenAI, especially over the next couple of years. So again, I agree with Hans and what was said. I think that there was probably a lot of drama and fallout from the Sam leaving and the drama that caused, that probably maybe left a bad taste. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what is going to happen with Karpathy over the next 6 months to a year, if he finds himself maybe even starting his own company at some point, or potentially even going back to a Musk company, and whether it's X or XAI. That will be really interesting. But I was just yeah, I think at this point, again, I don't know what is on Karpathy's mind. I mean, we all have probably had points in our career where we've kind of gone and taken a risk and realized that this is not what you wanted. But so that's why I think if that's the case, at least this guy has Elon's ear and could potentially pretty much choose where he wants to go, what he wants to focus on, and the role, and he can go do it. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why working for Musk, and if you can pretty much get his buy off that, you're hardcore, you're legit, you can pretty much go to any company. I mean, I know several employees at his companies that are working at SpaceX and X, or at Tesla and X, or SpaceX and Tesla. So that's one of the benefits of, if you've proven yourself, you can pretty much work on any crazy problem solving or AI that you want. And that's one of the benefits of being, one of working at a Musk company, especially if you can prove yourself. So I was pretty shocked, to be honest. I just thought it was a little bit short, but again, I don't know what's going on the back end. Joe, I'll pass this to you.
Hey, well, you didn't see the conversation, but so yeah, so this is a mega year for the mega pack, is what I wrote here, because as you can see here, not only do they have the Tesla semis delivering the freaking battery packs, but the mega factory, which is 5 to 10 minutes away from my house, is delivering a crazy amount of energy. Like, I think people kind of forget about it, because it's not the Cybertruck, right? It's not all fancy or whatever, but this is one of the things that's gonna put Tesla on that next plateau. Like, once you level up energy, I mean, this is just becoming like a freaking powerhouse for them. And I think people, like I said, it's just not as glamorous as some of the other things that they have going on, like the $25,000 car, things like that. But each of these is like over $1 million, and they're selling thousands of them. So to sleep on that is it's kind of crazy to me, that people just kind of oh yeah, mega packs.
It's a huge business. It's growing. It's going to be lumpy in terms of how revenue is recognized, but you can't deny the growth, and both in margins, which again those will also be lumpy too, and then the expansion later, in Shanghai, and I think it's going to be multiple countries, multiple continents as well.
Yeah, especially
So for those,
go ahead.
Sorry. For those who haven't seen it yet, Bradford and Matt released a very interesting video yesterday about Bloom Energy, and kind of the whole concept that they were exploring was the fact that right now we have this huge demand for increased power consumption from things like these AI data centers, which are like the growth in compute, and the power requirements from compute is going to be insane over the next 10 years. And our kind of legacy infrastructure to actually supply this growing amount of electrical demand, people are worried about the demand in electricity for EVs, but honestly, that's going to be small in comparison to the demand for electricity that's growing from data centers. And obviously we're going to want to figure this out, and our legacy energy infrastructure is not great at that. And so it's kind of creating this new market for returning to microgrids that, if it's going to take you 5 years to get your data center hooked up to power, then obviously that's a huge problem. And so what if you can supply your own power and you can do that in a way that's not connected to the grid whatsoever? That's challenging to do from a completely renewable standpoint, even with quite a bit of megapack batteries. But this Bloom Energy, they have fuel cells. And so that's one option to supplement, to where you could create a hybrid system where you've got some fuel cells for your base generation, and then you've got potentially some solar and or wind renewable generation, and then batteries to kind of blend everything together and do that storage piece. And if we see that market start to take off, then the revenue recognition from the sale of megapack batteries into those microgrids will be revenue that can be recognized much, much faster, because the holdup for most of these megapack projects in revenue recognition is that interconnect process into the grid. And so if we're kind of bypassing, if we're starting to create microgrids and we're bypassing having to connect them to the larger grid initially, then we can just sell those straight to customers. If we're selling them to people who are creating data centers, they're going to want to get those installed, up and running as quickly as possible, and that should really accelerate revenue recognition on that side of the business. And so it's a very interesting and exciting field to watch and pay attention to, and see, do megapacks really make sense in that marketplace? My initial impression is that it will, but that we're going to have to see if that bears out in the data. But if it does, that could be a huge, not only, it's a huge opportunity, but a huge increased demand. Like, there's a lot of demand just to support the overall infrastructure that we have. But then if we're going to be growing our energy production and demand by 2 or 3 times over the next 10, 20 years, then no one is really pricing that into what the overall addressable market of Megapack is. And so that's, huge potential upside for the stock.
Yeah, it's something I didn't think about. I'm gonna have to watch that Bradford video, because once you start thinking about the compute, I mean, everybody's talking about AI, right? Just like everybody was talking about how they're going to have like these vehicles that are coming out. But one of the things that JB Straubel noted was that people mentioned these things, but they didn't mention how they were going to get there or what batteries they were going to use. They just mentioned that, well, we're doing this. And as we see, like, a lot of these companies start to fall off. But now with everybody announcing all these AI things, you realize that there's a lot of compute that's involved with that, and a lot of energy that's going to consume. So yeah, you're going to have huge, these microgrids for these type of things. And it's going to be interesting to see what the future holds for that. But yeah, that's something I didn't even think about. It's awesome.
Yeah, I actually didn't even think. You want to go, Hans? You probably had something else.
I was just going to say, the video that they put out was just purely looking at the opportunity with Bloom and their fuel cell technology. But in the setup for that, they really talked about the microgrids. And so this conversation is kind of extrapolating based on their microgrid demand setup. What could the impact of that be on megapacks, or vice versa? What could the impact of megapack be in the feasibility and financial, opportunity for setting up these microgrids?
Well, just like with the EVs, like, Tesla's not the only game in town, right? So you have all these battery companies that are also make other power plays in this arena as well. But the end all be all is that the more players, the more opportunity there is for everybody. So, like, it just moves it all forward. So I don't mind them talking about Bloom or anything like that, because it just sheds more light once people start to invest or start to look at things, that they're going to see that Tesla's doing something. They're going to see that LG and all these other companies are also have plays in it. So it's going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's super interesting from the fuel cell perspective, just because that is such a complementary. Like, if you can produce power more cheaply with wind or solar, then that's great. But then you also have to store that energy. And one of the things that's really hard to solve in a purely renewable microgrid, whether you're trying to set it up, like if you're trying to go off grid for your house, you can pretty much get a reasonable system that will solve 95 to 98% of your energy needs very, very feasibly. But if you want to say, hey, what happens when we are in a blizzard for 2 weeks? Like, can I have enough energy to get me through if I can't generate anything from solar or anything for wind because of some sort of cataclysmic event? That problem is very, very difficult to solve with renewables. And so you can say, hey, I should be fine for all my normal usage, but in an emergency case, I'm completely and utterly hosed unless I spend, 2 or 3 times the amount of the total overall system just to protect me, as insurance against that one cataclysmic event. And fuel cells can slot right into that need, that long tail, very difficult to solve, very expensive to solve need very well. And they can also just provide you with good, affordable base load generation. So it's very complementary to an overall renewables microgrid or, even single home off grid solution. And so that's something that's exciting because I think it has the potential to make the implementation of renewable energies even more feasible on a quicker time scale, at prices that really make sense.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting to see what is possible with these mega packs. I mean, I think it's just like anything, it's just building capacity for these, especially I think as they potentially put together another giga pack mega factory or mega factory. I think aren't they putting another one in? Are they are expanding Nevada? I think, or is that China? I don't remember, or both. I thought they were putting another Megapack factory or expanding the ones that they currently have.
They're expanding battery production in Nevada. I'm not sure
Okay.
if it's Megapack or not, but I know they're expanding battery production.
Okay. So I wanted to quickly circle back. I know we had hit the Karpathy topic, but we had like some last minute adjustments that could actually really help bring this conversation to full circle. So let me add this. But Elon, in timely fashion on Valentine's Day, threw out the infamous "Don't panic." But what was your guys' read on this, and how do you think this fits in?
When I saw, obviously it was a video, it's a graphic or video, and it had the Grok robot kind of floating, in air. And what is it floating over? It's floating over a Tesla and it's floating over a bot. So, Elon definitely likes to speak in code, and he likes to have hidden, Easter eggs everywhere. And you can read a number of different things in it. Grok coming to Tesla, obviously Grok integration into the bot, and really overall XAI support of Tesla, and maybe some form of integration. Who knows where you can take it, but definitely linkage between them. And he's confirmed this before, but it's nice to see it being refreshed, especially with everything going on with the compensation conversations and so forth. It's nice to see, that graphic coming, from him. So anyway, it could mean that, the development on Grok has been extremely rapid, and I wouldn't be surprised if there aren't Teslas floating around with, the ability to speak to it and converse, and again in prototype fashion. So it'd be interesting to see how close we actually are. But it was just nice to see, again, the Grok, the kind of the symbol for Grok, and then Teslas and bots together, as all as one.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see them prototyping something and us not finding out about it for like 2 years. Like as it stands right now, you have a lot of legacy auto plays that are 2026, 2027, like even like the Rivian R2, right? Like these things are set for production for 2026. And so you're looking at 2027. So Tesla and Elon still have like a good 3 years to figure out a lot of things. And as we know, they move a lot faster than everybody else. So it's going to be, yeah, I could see that happening. I bet you, like you say, there is something in the brew on the back end somewhere.
Yeah, and with I will tell you this, from coming from like the mobile world, and this always on listening phenomenon that really started with smartphones and with social media. I mean, you could definitely um, you would definitely I would believe you'd have the option to you don't want this type of interaction or not, but I think it's going to be much different than the press the microphone, wait a second, listen for the beep, say something, and then a few seconds later something comes back. I think you could have the opportunity for this always on conversation back and forth, or Grok sensing connected to various sensors in the car and trying to understand things and maybe communicate things back to you. Again, if you have those settings on, it's not like it would be forced or in any way, but I think this would be a much different experience. I tweeted about this before, kind of more like the Kit Knight Rider experience, especially for all the nerds out there. And I think it could be really amazing. Anyway, it was just nice to see those two things together. And he doesn't, why did he send that?
Yeah, I think, well, real quick, Hans, I think that Sandy Monroe has said this, like, Tesla is one of the only companies that's giving away so much for free, whether you use it or not. And that the compute that the vehicle has is one of those things that Tesla just gives away. And there's a lot of people that are afraid of FSD and driving on it, and they don't use that compute at all. And so the fact that Tesla has this and that they could somehow implement this without even having to really change much of what they're already doing is something to think about. But go ahead, Hans.
I was just going to add, there's one tidbit that I saw on someone. It was a screenshot where they were looking at Grok, and it was, fun mode, regular mode, and then it said Grok 1.0, kind of implying that maybe they're ready to release a Grok 2.0. And so the timing of that is very coincidental. It seems that we're looking at, Grok flying over a Tesla right at potentially an impending release of Grok 2.0. So, I don't know what that means, but interesting tidbit to kind of fuel the speculation.
Yeah, I'm personally like, if it makes sense. I mean, at some point we know that there is an integration in various forms for Elon Musk's companies, right? Tesla is now advertising on X. I don't. I mean, he could. Who knows? Maybe he has the philosophy that everyone pays the same price, so maybe there is no discounting. But I would assume that there would be some favorability on that, unless, depending on maybe what the current situation is, maybe everyone has to pay the same for advertising on X. But I would assume that, if they can lock down a long-term deal with Tesla, advertising on X, there might be some like long-term discounting that they're giving, because they're already doing it now. Like, if you buy a verified organization, you get $1,000 ad credit every month. And they're discounting if you pay 10,000 for the year. So it'll be interesting, because Grok could really change, especially when you think of, just speaking to your car, having that access on demand through Grok. And, obviously, even with the robot and potentially anything else that they're going to build into their computer, or really their cars, Grok could really make a huge difference. Especially, I mean, if you think about it, the perfect time to potentially do this. I mean, even obviously, if you're thinking about the $25,000 car, if that's supposed to be obviously the next gen platform 3, but the potentially one of the most affordable but futuristic cars, that could be the place where they drop it, especially given it's supposed to be fully autonomous. So it'll be or not necessarily at that point, but that's the goal, is to get there. And so that could be an interesting time. But yeah, I'm really excited to see how all of this stuff comes together, because again, 2 years ago we weren't even talking about Twitter or X like being a part of the thing now. And now you have really the best platform for on-demand news, or really world conversation, and it's the best real-time news, like, pretty much on the planet, no matter how you want to skin it, because everything else is just typically even always referring back to X on, some reporter posted something on there, right? So yeah, it'll be interesting. Jeff, were you going to say something? Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. So maybe I'm just misreading people. Okay. So this was interesting. I don't know how important this is really at this point. But like I always say this wrong. Stainless.
Stellantis.
Oh my
Stellantis.
Stellantis. I say this
Yay.
company's name like once a year, but either way, Stellantis finally adopted the NACS standard. This is a big deal just because they're really the last big domino. I mean, there's a couple of 2 or 3 small companies like Lucid, and potentially some of these other ones that have not made the announcement, like Canoe. Like, so we'll see. But what are your thoughts? I mean, this really is like, I mean, the last big domino to fall. But you think of where Tesla has gone, where it's come from, and where it's at now to, launching the standard, back in the day to now literally becoming the standard for all charging. It's pretty incredible to see.
Well, Lucid did announce that they are adopting NACS, but Canoe, that would be interesting. Canoe is like one of those companies that's like everywhere but nowhere. All at once. They're doing all this stuff with like Walmart and NASA and stuff, but then like you don't see them anywhere. Like, I don't know. So that'd be interesting to see what's going on with that. But Stellantis, I think, is another one of those things that's inevitable. Like it has to happen. I mean, Tesla didn't create the supercharger network with the intent of becoming the only re-energizing station for all EVs. It just happened to work that way because they made a vehicle that needed this energy and they had no way to energize it, right, for people who wanted to travel. But as we know, like here they are, they have this, and now they have the best network anyway and the best uptime, and so now everybody's going to be using that network. And I know we have a later slide on it, but the fact that these supercharging stations are getting bigger with the anticipation of what's to come and knowing that everybody's going to be able to charge on the network is pretty awesome. So there it is. Also in my neck of the woods. This is in Kern County near Bakersfield. This is one of the world's largest supercharger that's going to be built. 164 stalls. It's like mega.
And you just to remind people, this is the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
So
yeah. If you haven't been out to Bakersfield,
yeah,
like desert.
But you're not talking like Los Angeles. They're
Right.
taking a parking lot and changing it. This is all really for commuting. One of the other big ones in that area is the Harris Ranch. It's 100 stalls. But yeah, I completely agree with you. It's pretty incredible to see, all the stuff that they're building.
And is the anticipation that these will get? I mean, the one that's at 100 stalls right now, do those get filled up
During like 3 times a year?
Yeah,
but not even full capacity necessarily. But they can get like maybe up to 60 to 70, depending on how many cars are going through.
Yeah. You're never like I've never seen it, and we did a few takeover of the Harris Ranch with hella people, and I mean it moves so fast with the 250 kilowatts that people get in and out and they're done in like 10 to 15 minutes. It's like pretty incredible to see how fast people rotate out of there. But another thing to think about is that the Harris Ranch, they just implemented like solar and covered parking, covered canopies for the whole area. So all of those areas are now covered. So if you're there and it's raining or whatever, like everybody has a canopy and everybody's covered in that area. So that's pretty cool.
It really just shows you what adoption rate that they're planning this isn't installed for today's. It's installed for where they see it in the future. So
especially with all the EVs coming on board. I mean, again, I don't know when Ford is, if it's going to be March or April, but once that happens, it's not like there's a ton of Fords, but it really depends on the locations that they open up for these other EVs to come in. That's the key thing here, is how is that going to impact? I don't really care about like stations like this or, the kind of the one-offs that like Scotts Valley, which was one of the first Magic Dock stations. Like those are kind of like they're not very used that much. There's not a high capacity of usage. But when you're talking, in my area, like some of the Cupertino locations, Santana Row, um, some of the other locations further north as well, like those are the locations that are they going to be very congested because they can't really upgrade those, right? Even the one in my town went from 12 to 20, but they're the 72 kilowatt, and those things are, at capacity a decent portion of the time, but they're slow charging. And so once those get open, and I don't even think those ones can, because they don't have the magic dock or even the the computer that can take a credit card or a payment. So that'll be really interesting to see. But yeah, I think it's as you said, it's meant for what what is possible down the road. Like 10 years from now, I could see that's going to be a fat gas station in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are going to be getting out. So I thought this was really interesting. I think this is one of the first times that Tesla has come out, in my opinion, to pretty much say that, hey, the refresh is not coming out anytime soon. In the past, they've kind of just left it up in the air. But so please keep me honest here. But I thought this was really interesting. Again, the Model Y refresh is called supposedly, and who knows how much these code names actually are true, but it's called Juniper. And so Tesla has confirmed that there is no Model Y, no new Model Y refresh, whatever you want to call it, that is coming this year. And so, but what are your thoughts and sentiment on this? Were you shocked when you heard this? Because this is kind of out of beat to like throw news at us like that, or confirm something like that. But what do you also potentially think that this maybe why they're doing this?
I think that Tesla's realizing, like, I mean, as we all know, like the Model Y is like their freaking Hail Mary that actually is like landing like every shot it makes. So like I think they realize that, and then also you don't want to Osborne like what you have potentially coming out. So there's no reason to slow sales of Model Y right now for something that's potentially like a year away or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's not now. So it's like I can see why they would do this. And typically in Tesla fashion, nothing's ever typical with Tesla. So like, yeah, they normally don't make comments like this or even speak on it. But of course, Tesla being Tesla, they do whatever they want whenever they want. And they're not always the same, which is why they're appreciated and feared by a lot of the industry. So yeah, I see that. I think that inevitable, of course, it's got to have like, I mean, it's the Model Y. It's got to have a rear monitor. It's got to have like all these things that are like luxury in like the new Model 3 and in every vehicle that they have right now except the Model Y. So I'm pretty sure it's inevitable, but since it's not now, there's no need for them to announce it or make it seem like, hey, you might want to hold off. You know what I mean? Like they have so many units to move. So
Yeah, I'll just say quickly, Tesla's expanding their capacity, and they need to fully utilize it, and that's part of the reason you're seeing the $1,000 off for a few week time period in the middle of the quarter. I think it's a great. Speaking from a supply chain perspective, that's perfect. That's what you want. You don't want all these expedites at the end. So if you couple that with this messaging, and they use the term, excuse me, live on air.
I knew that was coming. I could see it in your eyes.
You saw them use the term this year. That was a little bit surprising as well. So they're confirming. So I can see it being basically a year out of phase from the Model 3 refresh in North America.
I mean, I would say that this makes total sense as far as the strategy. I am a little bit surprised that they actually talked about it explicitly, but think about how long it took them to refresh the Model 3, and people were calling for, a model refresh for quite a long time before they finally did it. And, why did it take so long? Well, part of that was that they were aggressively growing, and they, didn't want to sideline the production of Model 3s. And even when they finally did the refresh, you see that they did it in such a way as really not to reduce the overall vehicle production of Tesla by, very much in order to accomplish that. And so while like the Model Y is the best selling car in the world, and there's plenty of markets that it is not sold in yet. And so there's no need from a demand standpoint to increase the desirability of the Model Y relative to their other offerings. And so, until we get to where we start seeing the next generation vehicle platform, maybe take a little bit of the pressure off of the Model Y as the main driver of unit sales. I don't see them doing any sort of major, like they might do it in one location, but I don't see like a global changeover of the Model Y from what they're making now to a refreshed version until we see other vehicles that can really help to drive the unit growth that Tesla's planning for.
Yeah, I think it's also a sign of the tale that Tesla's maturing as a company, right? Because I think it's this type of information, and as Joe was perfectly saying, is like this is their bread and butter car. And so if there's any signs of demand holding up because people are excited about the next one to be released, it's good that they're putting this out now and quickly so that we can all kind of move on knowing like if you want the car, get it this year. Still, there's like don't wait another 9 months potentially for something that may or may not happen. So I thought that this was a good sign on their end, and obviously with the incentives too, taking $1,000 off or adjusting the price literally in the second month of the quarter. I don't think I've ever seen that. It's typically you get all the deals the last month. That's always just been the MO of Tesla. They've and a lot of this stuff now you can start compounding on too. So like FSD transfer and all this, all the other things that they're throwing out there. So or I think it's the free supercharging. Sorry. So misspoke there. But either way, it's a lot of stuff that you can that they're starting to show signs of. I think just growing as a company and maturing, especially knowing that people will hold up. Especially like if I'm not in a rush and I have maybe an older Model S or X, it could be one of those things where they know people will wait. And so by doing this, it allows, people to make the decision to pretty much, get at the point of sale, get the tax rebate if they can, along with another $1,000 off and potentially other incentives that you can compound a lot of this stuff on. All right, going to pass it to Joe. China is coming.
China is coming. So the way I wrote this up and our only hope is Tesla is because like, here we have in America where for whatever reason, Tesla's not viewed as this great American car company that it is. There's people that I have family and friends who don't even realize that Tesla's made here in California. It's pretty wild. But you're looking at what you're seeing here is you're seeing Tesla becoming like number one in like everywhere it's implemented for sales, right? But the reason why I think Rohan commented like Tesla's number one selling car in China and Europe, the Model Y anyway, people assume that we're referring to electric vehicles, but no, it's just the best passenger vehicle overall. So you have a situation where BYD, I mean, there's another slide we have where BYD is like crushing it, and people can make these comments or whatever that they want to make about how BYD is doing all these things and how Tesla should watch out, but really everybody should watch out. like it's only Tesla and BYD. Like, you know what I mean? Like everybody else is like falling by the wayside, and you can be quickly forgotten in this industry and lose all hope if you know what I mean, if the people don't get behind, these great companies that are trying to do great things. And Tesla's just one of those companies that I know people love to hate or whatever, but I mean, we got nobody else. You know what I mean? Ford's not globally crushing it with like 2 million EVs per year. You know what I mean? Neither is any of the big three. So like you got to get behind the horse that's winning, and for people not to stand behind that is kind of wild to me. Realizing the impending of like there's going to be a lot of loss of jobs once China gets here, and Sandy Monroe has been very adamant about pointing this out to people. These cars are not garbage. You know what I mean? Like, you can look up some of these Chinese vehicles and they are made well. They have some really great features and they're not messing around. And the fact that Tesla is still able to crush sales over in China is just showing you that they got a formula that's working. And so to not realize that and to not get behind them when everything's happening right now is just kind of wild to me. I mean, there's like a space race, there's an EV race happening for each country. I mean, even India has a vehicle in the race, and Vietnam has now entered with VinFast. You know what I mean? Like, it's happening, and they're not fading out. You know what I mean? There's no demand problem. It's just educating people, and that's where the problem lies. People need to be educated on what EVs can do, how much better they are. And I have made a post on X about how I believe like this is one of the last years you're going to see ICE vehicles atop sales or anything going forward. I think we're at a tipping point now to where like you're not going to see like ICE sales become greater than what they are right now. Like, they are slowly declining, and it's been year over year, and people don't want to admit it, but it's happening. EVs are just inching up slowly but surely.
Hans or Jeff, did you guys want any thoughts?
Yeah, the data bores that out. ICE is over capacity. Like in US, like over 8 million units from its prior peak. If you look at the SAR for 2024, the year we're in, versus 2023, they're talking about a 1% to 2% growth in total auto. And then if you were to net out what EV is supposed to do in that total auto, it would make ICE plus hybrid negative year on year. So I think that's a big milestone. And there was some supply constraints for the prior 2 years where there was some pent up demand. So yeah, this is a big tipping point. I think that's one of the reasons you've seen the FUD meter turn to 11 because some of these things are now knowable facts, and it's right in front of people. So yeah, it's happening.
Yeah, I would just say, like, for the number one selling vehicle in the world to be something with an average sales price north of $40,000. I mean, now it's less than that with the IRA incentive, but last year it was well north of that $40,000 mark. And then for the next closest car, the ASP on the Toyota Corolla being in the 20s, it's roughly twice as expensive and selling more units. So as the average price of EVs continues to fall, continues to get closer to that 20,000-ish ASP, then ICE just has no hope. And so that's really the overall tale that is being told, is that ICE vehicles are getting more and more expensive every year. EVs are getting cheaper and cheaper every year and providing a higher value proposition. And so as that trend just continues, it's inevitable that I was actually having this conversation with my mother-in-law. She's like, I don't think that I'll ever, 10 years from now, I don't really want an EV because my gas car will be cheaper. And I'm like, if price is the thing that you're going to make that decision on, which it is, and it should be, and it will be for everyone, then I guarantee you 10 years from now, it will be cheaper to purchase, own, operate, maintain an EV than it is for you. And so you're not going to spend more money just to get on your ideological high horse to own that V8 gas car, because you're going to vote with your dollars. It's going to make more sense. And, right now we are at one of those big tipping points where it's very visible that we can see that this is what's happening, but it's only going to get more clear over time.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that this panel has already discussed. It'll be interesting to see really about. I think again we've talked a lot about this. There's two things, and one I'll give a personal experience, and then two we'll finish with this topic. But specifically, I can't tell you how many how many comments I'll get on specific videos, whether it's on Instagram or even TikTok, that will do fairly well. That'll get, tens of thousands of views, not hundreds of thousands, but tens of thousands of views. And just the comments that you'll get on there, it's just, and then I'll even respond to those comments in another video. But I've been using some of those videos, like I'll use like the first kind of like 4 or 5 seconds, in some ways kind of clickbait. And then I'll end with education, because a lot of it is the people that don't understand electric vehicles are really the people that need to understand electric vehicles, which, but it's just mind boggling to me just how many people do not understand electric vehicles. And that is going to be the greatest hill that needs, or mountain that needs to be climbed to continue to push the adoption, the mass adoption. But I was looking at some stats. I think a video had gotten 8,000 views, not many, but only 20% of them were from my follower base, and the remaining 80% were literally from, probably just haters of electric vehicles. But those are the people that they need to see this stuff in their feed, and they clearly keep engaging with it. So then they're going to see more of it. But those are the people that need to be educated. And so, that really just leads into kind of what we can potentially end with. And who knows, maybe we can get your thoughts on, how do we, and we've talked a little bit about this, whether it's advertising, informational stuff, but I still think that, the average American, if you want to call it that, I think there's Sawyer put out a tweet about this consumer report that showed 64% of US consumers have little to no experience with EV still. Obviously we see that potentially happening with Hertz. Obviously they're selling off a bunch of theirs. But even in this tier here, you can see in this pie chart, you can see the EV level of experience, and really the higher levels of like 3 and 4, again, based on if they responded to any of the 4 experiences on the left, you can see is really low. And so like 0 and 1%, is pretty much, over, again, 60+%. And if you include tier 2, it's even further. So I think that's going to be the greatest feat of the next 6, literally 2 to 5, 6, until we get out of 2030. That's going to be the mass education. And even for myself, right? I'm in a Model X right now. I'm potentially going to get a Cybertruck tomorrow. And even jumping from a Model X to a Cybertruck, there is a huge learning curve, especially because I have a legacy one, right? I'm going back to no stalks, parking and no parking automatic. So that's, so I have driven a Cybertruck before, but, jumping back into a Model X of 2018, it feels like historic. And so, there has to be, drivers need to have an open mind about some of this stuff a little bit too. But at the same time, it's just about education, getting in the seat, getting an experience, maybe having a friend giving you a ride, whatever it may be. But yeah, I think that was just an interesting article to really just showcase like the lack of education or the lack of experience with electric vehicles that people have. But I'm seeing it all over social media, especially on some of these more video driven ones like TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah, I love these surveys because number one, there's data. Number two, just look at the data. 38 out of 100 people are seriously considering buying an EV. Today in America, only 9 out of 100 people actually have bought an EV that buy a car. So you have 9 going, to 38. So there's this upward pull on EV adoption. 1, 2. When we have these ideological debates of ads or no ads, first off, Tesla is doing ads on YouTube and Google and so forth. But when we have these debates, I always say go back to data and go back to that 3 or 4 question survey and really just measure awareness. That's the key to me, is Tesla going country by country and inside of major regions and countries and understanding what is the awareness of EV, what is the awareness of Tesla pricing and the overall, end-to-end lifetime cost to own an EV. What's the awareness of the ability to charge and all the things that people are concerned about, range. 2 or 3 questions that really get to the heart of EV adoption. And then you target ads where you have the least amount of awareness. And and that could be a recipe to really drive and stoke further demand, and then also really keep a lid on your advertising spend and not be so wasteful. So I love these surveys, and I think from a ads or no ads perspective, I think it's data or no data, and figure out where you have an awareness problem, and then go attack the awareness problem. Report out on it every quarter. What are we doing to improve our aggregate awareness globally? Report, and drive improvement. The only way you can drive improvement in something is that if you actually measure it.
So I actually have, a somewhat different take on that. I thought that survey was incredible news, because it shows, maybe somebody here knows the exact number. I think the fleet of vehicles that Tesla has ever delivered is in the neighborhood of 5 million vehicles.
Over five and a
And
half.
it's
Yeah.
5.5 now. Okay, so we'll say under 6 million, and then if you add in maybe all the other EVs that have ever been delivered by all the rest of the automakers, you're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of, we'll just ballpark it at 10 million total EVs, pure BEVs on the road. And if we say that, there's close to 1 billion total cars in the overall automotive fleet, then you're talking about a tiny fraction of a percent of EVs that are on the road compared to gas cars. And so for, close to 40% of drivers in the United States to have this much exposure to EVs when they make up such a small percentage of the overall fleet of vehicles is actually really good news. It means that Tesla has been very effective at getting the message out there relative to the number of cars that they've been able to deliver. And, to Jeff's point, when 9 out of 100 own an EV, but you have upwards of 30 who are interested in owning an EV, that means there's already a large potential market of people who are interested in owning these vehicles as long as they can afford them. And so, yeah, I think that really this shows that we're in a good position overall. And I tend to agree with Elon that the main thing, like, could targeted ads and education, like, could that be helpful? Yes, absolutely. But I think that helps at the margins, and that over the long term, the only way that you really solve this problem, it goes back to the comment that I made earlier. EVs have to be cheaper to purchase and operate than ICE vehicles and provide more value to the customer. If you can solve that problem, and not just for buyers of new vehicles, but also for buyers of used vehicles, then that's where you really drive that completely vertical adoption curve, on the S. And so we cannot accomplish the mission without aggressively bringing down prices. And so I love to see the fact that they're doing that with the current lineup of vehicles, even on top of what they're doing, trying to develop this next generation platform, which is going to be, from an architectural standpoint and a supply based standpoint, an even cheaper follow on. And all of that is going to drive much lower. There's been a lot of kerfuffle over the last week about, oh no, used car prices of Teslas is going down. It's like, that's a good thing. This is what it takes to accomplish the mission, because there's plenty of buyers who, they don't purchase a car that costs them more than $10,000. And there's even more people that they don't purchase a car if it costs them more than $5,000. And right now we don't have Teslas that are old enough to where they ever get sold on the used market at those types of prices. And so those buyers are never going to transition to an EV until there are used options that are available. And so, part of that is we just need a fleet that actually includes vehicles that are old enough to be sold at those types of prices. But it also includes driving down the prices of new vehicle sales so that the used market actually comes down as well.
Yeah, I think it has been really interesting. I mean, the fact that you can get into a 2018 Model 3 for like 20 to $25,000, that's truly incredible. I mean, the biggest thing is just checking the integrity of the battery. But outside of that, I mean, it's an amazing car. It's the new Toyota Corolla. I mean, it's cost of ownership over a 5-year period is cheaper on a Model 3 than it is on a Toyota Corolla, which says, I mean, that's the kingpin. That's been the crown jewel of auto in North America for the longest time. So the fact that they've taken that crown from a cost of ownership perspective and even maintenance is incredible. So yeah,
Well,
I mean,
that and the fact that a 2018 Model 3 is going to be leaps and bounds better than a 2018 Corolla or even a Camry at that point. Like you're just like people got in my 2013 Model S and were like, this is like a spaceship. And I'm just like, yeah,
this
but
is so old.
yeah.
I get in my Model Y, I step ahead.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, it's these cars are amazing, and to be able to get them at an affordable rate, it's big. So I'm just going to close you with a couple of things you need to know. So if you want your Cybertruck faster, I make sure you use 30,000 referral credits. You could get your Cyber Beast Foundation series within 45 days. So again, if you are getting this option, make sure to take advantage of it. Cybertruck continues. It's been in Japan most recently. And again, this thing is the most viral futuristic product you'll ever see. And so, you know, I think they did an amazing job at doing this Asia tour. And then the last thing is, if you have the time, go plug your car in to multiple different locations over the next 2 months, really. They will announce the winner, but whoever has the time to travel or live in their car for the next 60 days, you should totally do this, because you never know what the Easter egg will be that you'll win. It's crazy to actually know. I think I've seen, at least on X, 2 people who've gotten, they won the raffle for the Cybertruck. So again, these awards are amazing. So I think, you know, if you can, make sure to go and check that out. But yeah, so thank you again to Hans, Jeff, and Joe. Please patronize them, whether you're on X, give them a follow. If you're on YouTube, go subscribe to Hans's channel. He's actually, his handle is in the description or the title. So make sure you go follow him. But yeah, thank you again for joining and having an amazing discussion. Another great week. Have a great week, everyone. See ya.